This is Infection, the survival podcast, recorded live on Tuesday, February 8th, 2022, episode 369. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Welcome into another edition of Infection, the survival podcast. Infection is your source for the latest information on survival video games. My name is Nick Craig. You can check out my daily political antics by visiting nickcraig.com. You can find all of my social media links at nickcraig.net. At some point or another, I probably should get all of that stuff combined into one website. And of course, the website where you'll find everything combined for this illustrious program is infectionpodcast.com. Joining us as he does each and every week, my good friend, Brian with an I, Aldridge. Hello, Mr. Brian. How are you?
Hello. I am doing very well. And as Nick said, of course, our website, but let me give you a couple others here really quick in case you want to find me. At Brian Aldridge on Gab, Parler, and Getter, right? And who knows what'll be next. I'm sure there'll be a huge list before
Truth Social.
Something else. Truth Social. Yeah, we'll see how that goes. So, and of course, if you want to get my blog, biteoftech.com. And then, as Nick said, go to infectionpodcast.com. And on the right-hand side, I did add back. I get a little bit carried away when I was removing buttons last week. But I did add back the join our server on Discord button and put a new link on there. So if you're not on our Discord, I really encourage you to, because we've got a news channel. Maybe there's a game we're not covering, a topic we're not covering, or you have some input on something we have been covering. You're more than welcome to do that in the news channel. Also, we have ARC servers running. So a lot of people have been really active on that. We have a pretty big ARC community. And then if you want to watch the show, you can do that through Twitch, YouTube, BitChute, and DLive. And of course, the audio-only forms are available after the show is done. The video forms you can watch live and get some of those after the fact. But if you're looking for the audio forms, just go to the lower right-hand side and you'll see all the different links and platforms that you can use to listen to the podcast. Pick whatever works for you best, and then click on the particular episode that you're going to be listening to, and you can follow along, because we have episode notes and video links. Everything that you need to refer to while we're doing the episode is all included there with a nice audio and video player if you want to watch it in that tab. If you want to support us, just go to up top where it says support, or go to infectionpodcast.com/support. We're Prime Gaming subs, Humble Bundle, Amazon Prime. We've got Subscribe Star, a lot of different ways that people have supported us, and it's added up, and hopefully we'll be able to meet in person again and go to a convention and find out about some of these new games that are coming out in person.
Yeah, in person. What a novel concept. And yes, of course, the website infectionpodcast.com. We've got a lot of kind of all over the place news, Brian. I guess let's start off quickly with a new title from Amazon that is expected to launch here on Friday. It's going to launch on the 11th, so it's not playable right now, but it will be before next week's show. It's called LostArk, and it is their second MMO, which is interesting because they've got New Worlds, which is also an MMO, and now LostArk, which is another MMO, a different style, but another MMO. Do you take anything away from the fact that Amazon's two games, their studio's been up and running for, 3-4 years now, and their first two games are MMOs? Is it because of the subscription model, because you can make money in the long term, the longevity? What is it? What do you think?
Yeah, looking at the differences between these two so far that I can tell, the first one didn't have any sort of a class system, wasn't very much like the normal MMO that you know. This one seems a lot more like a normal MMO. It's got your standard classes like mages. They call them different things. So an assassin is probably some sort of a rogue, or a martial artist could be some, another form of that. Warriors, gunners, so your tanks, and then your ranged. I mean, this one has more of the cut and dry mechanics, it looks like. And if you look at their founders packs and all the different price range they have crystals and all these things that you can spend, much like a mobile game, in getting your character leveled faster. That's the part I don't like. I mean, this one looks a lot more like hey, we're going to ask you for, to purchase crystals and to do all these things to unlock these skins. I haven't seen that in the other game, yet. I just haven't seen it. I haven't seen them really push. But this one, right from the get go, you can see it. I mean, if you go to their become a on the upper right says buy founders pack, you can see some of the things that they're offering.
Yeah,
I mean,
and
you're pretty much paying to change your, or you get a title, pets,
Head
a crystalline
Start.
aura, which probably makes you earn resources faster in game. I mean, there's a lot of pay to win type of mechanics in this, if that's what it's doing.
It's interesting. I was surprised when I clicked, because normally when we see founders editions and founder packs, we're talking, $59, $69. But to see that the bronze founder pack was only $15, I was like, well, damn, that's pretty lucrative and pretty enticing. It doesn't look like you get a whole hell of a lot, but you get access to the game 3 days early, which is you don't typically see a price tag like that. And it's also important to note, Brian, this is another free to play MMO, which is a little bit of which is a change from when you look at WoW, which is the kind of the gold standard. Now then you had games like EverQuest, which I believe was EverQuest always free. I believe it was. No.
Well, no, not originally. I think it was a subscription model originally. And you had to buy the game.
Okay. So this is very much let's just call it the 21st century MMO style that they're going along with. So we'll talk a little bit about it, but the game is going to be out on the 11th, so this Friday, and they released a gameplay trailer, which we can talk about. And then they released like a 20-minute director's cut video. So let's start off with the gameplay trailer for Amazon's new game, LostArk. So that's the gameplay launch trailer for the game. It is completely free to play on Friday the 11th, and this New World is first of all, it's a paid for game. It has no subscription with it. It's free in terms of there's no monthly subscription associated with it. But New World is more of a survival MMO, while this is more of your bog standard WoW mythical MMO, at least from the looks of it. Is that what you took away?
Yeah, from the initial things. And I'm looking at some of the perks you get for this. Some of this, the founder's exclusive pet, for instance, that is something, of course, you can only get if you probably pre-purchase this or purchase it within a limited amount of time. But that thing will go out and collect loot. So probably when it's next to you, you don't have to run up to the things and go grab the loot. It'll run over and loot your thing. So there's a lot of these things that I don't know if they'll be giving away something like that easily, in the future, or if this is going to be an exclusive thing. WoW, ended up having something similar to that. Also, they have on there discounts for things, make some of your gear stronger by this aura, which is a 30-day subscription. So it sounds like they'll have some sort of a subscription service that you can pay to get these enhancements.
Which,
there's a number of them. Which is kind of how, it's like a little season pass in a mobile game.
So I think I'm torn on this. Part of me is like, I'm not an MMO player, first of all. So take my opinion for what it's worth. By the way, this will be on Steam as well. It is on Steam, I should say. But for the more casual MMO player, Brian, if you don't have the time to grind, it sounds like you can maybe... it sounds like they'll have because this is a 30-day crystalline aura, which is what they're calling this. It sounds like that will be something that you'll be able to subscribe or buy on a long term. Now, you might be able to buy it with in-game money and or physical physical USD or other currencies. But for people that don't have the time to grind, this I mean, I guess it makes the learning curve a little bit easier, Brian. If you don't have the 5 hours a day to commit to an MMO, but you've got $10 a month, you can maybe cut that 5 hours down to 2. So,
and I think that's
it's kind of that double-edged sword, right?
Yeah, they're trying to figure out what's that balance. Really,
yeah.
Right. They're trying to figure out how do you, because the old ways of doing it, I'm seeing it in some of these other games that I play too. Raid, there's that Raid mobile game. They're trying to figure out how to make it to where it's less time consuming, because people, when you get up to more competitive levels inside the game, it's just a lot of time. And so they're making adjustments to that. I think in WoW, that's something that they've been trying to tackle, but I think that they've tackled it in a way that really just took the fun out of the game. I think all of these different versions of these games, I think they're doing variations of them. They're trying to probably find the thing that's going to replace that way of doing it. You can still have a ton of fun, raid, do all these things, feel like you're making cool progress, doing things that, you put enough time and work into something, it makes it feel special to you. It makes it feel bigger. They have to provide that experience without it taking 5 hours in an evening to sit there and play the game. They need to have it where in an hour you can go on and done a lot of stuff and then go do something else, or an hour and a half. But 5 hours is too much, like you used to do with some of the MMOs.
Yeah,
they're much more time commitment.
Yeah, and it's also a very different era of gaming than we're we're talking about in the early 2000, late 90s, early 2000s, when games like EverQuest and whatnot spawned up. So their website is playlostark.com. The game is available on Steam. You can search for it in the Steam store, and it will launch here at the end of the week. And we'll likely have some more news on it next week once it's out in people's hands actually, it'll be out tomorrow for people to play that bought the it's out today for the people that bought the founders pack that got
3 days early.
Yeah, 3 days early. So I believe they're playing it today because I saw it was high. It was high on Twitch. But yeah, that's LostArk, and it will be interesting to see how Amazon does now with their only 2 titles, both being variations of MMOs. One more of a classic style MMO, and the other one more of a survival MMO mix. And as you eloquently put it, Brian, it's take the elements that you think that work from a bunch of the other games that have been built over the last 2 decades and figure out what works and figure out what doesn't, and try and make the best thing possible. Because it is these games are very lucrative for these developers. I mean, you can talk about a cash cow. I mean, Blizzard made millions upon millions. They may have made tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars on World of Warcraft over its lifetime. It is a very, very lucrative game genre if it's done correctly and done. And you talk about Raid Shadow Legends on a mobile side, that company's pulling in tens of millions of dollars a month.
What they're doing.
It's incredible.
Yep, it's a very competitive. I mean, it's the thing where people put a lot of time and money into.
Yeah,
and it's gonna. I think that mobile is what really ruined it. I think for the rest, because people realized, when in MMOs and these games where they would commit a lot of time, they committed a lot of time to you sitting at a computer like I am right now and focusing on that one thing. Then mobile came along, and they could kind of apply some of those same mechanics of keeping you hooked, but you can take that thing and put it in your pocket, and you can pull it out, do a couple little things here, and then put it back in your pocket. And so it can create that similar type of feel. And then they started using it to get money and to get progress. They did things they would never have gotten away with on a PC or a full game, like you get a PC game or a full-fledged game. And I think that kind of killed it for these other games that used to actually take a lot of time, because they figured out how to provide it by letting you have it in your pocket and getting you what you need through the day. Made it to where you just can't compete. People don't want to sit 5 hours anymore when they can do it, 15 minutes here and there.
Exactly. Yeah, walking around with a full computer in your pocket. So again, the game is called LostArk, and I'm sure we'll have more details over the next couple of weeks about that. Want to talk about Google for a minute here, Brian, real quick. We've covered the saga that has been Google Stadia, and it does not appear that things are continuing to move very hot in the world of Stadia, as we covered at this point, probably over a year ago. They shuttered all of their first-party development studios, and as it stands right now, according to a new report from Business Insider, Google is planning on turning Stadia into a white label streaming platform, essentially just using it as an infrastructure platform, once licensed by businesses and used under their own branding. So a company would go to Google and purchase the streaming technology. It would be branded as, my company cloud or my company stream. And that's what they would be doing. So they would be using the tech of Stadia, which used to be called Google Stream, funny enough, because I think they've realized that Stadia is a lost cause and there's really no marketplace for it at all. At least I haven't seen the marketplace, if it even exists.
And I think I said initially when they announced Stadia in the first place that this front end stuff that you're seeing was all for the back end business client in the end, because that's what they do with most. That's what they did with Hangouts. That's what they do with all these things. Is they offer it to customers so that they can test it in mass, test bandwidth, and then they usually take it away from the customers in the end, and then they offer it to business clients. So that's why Google's things come and go so quickly or often. It's either they've decided it's not going to work and they pull it, or they've finished testing it on the public. Gmail's one that they haven't done that, but they're really locking down and taking away the free Google Apps accounts they've done, and they're trying to really narrow that down. So this is more of kind of how Google does stuff. They were originally poising it as, here's a way we could do game editing, and game creation remotely. I think with COVID kind of changing course and things like that, maybe they're looking also, one thing that they claim in here, that Peloton, that client, that's one that they talk about in this article, that fitness bike maker where they do all the kind of make it a game in your indoor,
gamify it.
That the stock on that tanked, like it went to half here a couple weeks ago. That may be part of this decision as well, as one of their flagship products, pretty much is tanking right now and may not want to put in any kind of investment like that.
Yeah, and
so they think there's a lot of factors, but
I
think they're just trying to keep making money.
Yeah, their co-founders stepped down today. They announced more job cuts, and that's obviously a different conversation. But as bad as Stadia has been, Google is not a stupid company, Brian, and I'm confident when they were building Stadia, they built it obviously with the idea. They obviously wanted this to be a successful gaming service, but there's no question about it. They built it in a way in which, even if it wasn't, which it is not, that they can still retool it, rekey it, and not completely take an ass whooping on the R&D and the investment on the product. And now they'll market it.
Because they're usually the first ones, or one of the first ones to get to the market with these things. The problem is they're usually never the one that people like, because they usually don't put enough time, thought, and attention to what they're creating. They're just getting something out that's engineered in whatever way that they see fit. And then another company comes out right afterwards and puts out one, like Amazon did with the Fire TV to the Chrome stick. And then, there's other things that they've done the same thing with. I just think this is another one of those where they tried, didn't work, but some other company who maybe has some other thing envisioned couldn't go and put a mobile game out that's streamed, or put a game out that's streamed that uses a lot of cool advanced technology that we don't get to use right now. I think that would be the perfect use case.
It doesn't even have to be gaming. It just needs to be something interactive that streams. And I mean, you could talk, there's cloud desktops and things of that nature that companies are already buying. Lots of companies are moving to terminal-based computers where you buy a very, very low-power terminal computer, and on the Windows side, you're RDPing into you're remoting into an RDP server that's handling your sessions, and you're essentially just viewing a remote computer screen on a server, either on-premise or in the cloud. So I could see a use case for that, as well as more of a remote, remote desktop solution for companies that want to go out and buy. I think HP sells $100 thin client. I mean, it's a very cheap computer, and then you don't have to worry about upgrades and AV and none of that stuff. It's all running on a centralized service. There is still no report that they are shutting down Stadia. They are still promoting and advertising it as it's got over 200 games in its library. So there's no indication that they're shutting it down, but there's really no ambition or enthusiasm to grow it in any way, shape, or form. So I assume it's just going to coast until their contracts run out with some of these games, because I'm sure there's contractually obligation, there's contractual obligations, terms for time, and all of that stuff. And I would guess once those run out, then they'll probably
won't have those 200 games.
They'll probably shut down the service. There's no reason for them to shut it down now. Keep it going. If nobody's using it, it doesn't cost them anything. At least,
well, and it cost them a lot more probably to shut it down right now.
Yeah,
as you're kind of saying, if they're breaking all those contracts, where if they just let them run out, even though they're not really paying anything, them breaking those contracts will make them pay a lot of money.
Precisely. Yeah. So interesting to see that that's what's going on with Stadia. The idea that there was going to be any second wind or second shot for Google to try and reinvigorate or reinvent this. I think with Microsoft, with their two big acquisitions, and then Sony with the acquisition of Bungie, none of those game titles from either of those three studios are ever going to be on Stadia. If it wasn't safe to say before, Brian, I think it's safe to say now, Stadia is dead.
Yeah. I don't think there's anything that's going to bring it back.
No, not at all. The fact that they're not developing anything first party or in house.
Yep.
You're never going to get an Activision Blizzard game. You're never going to get a Bethesda game. You're never going to get a Bungie game. At least new ones potentially. So
do you have something in particular you want to talk about? Because I have something I think that kind of ties to this a little bit.
Hit me.
Let's talk about Netflix for a minute.
Sure.
Because game streaming and Netflix, that seems to be kind of a new thing. And right now we've been looking a lot at Microsoft and the game streaming that they're going to offer. PlayStation has their game streaming that they're going to offer. But I don't think people are really taking seriously enough what Netflix could do with game streaming as far as bringing gaming to your average person. Because they have so much hardware. The hardest part would be getting controllers. As long as they offered some sort of a Bluetooth connection to a controller, they could stream most everything. They have the hardware capabilities to stream, 4K plus video over a standard home internet connection, and the thing works pretty well. For them to be able to then stream gaming sessions would be a pretty simple thing, other than engineering it. They've been talking about mobile games. They're going to be creating these mobile games. They have some games that you can interact with while you're watching a show, where you can choose between options. But I think that I haven't figured out where they're going with this, and what they view online game. But I think they could be a major competitor to the Xbox cloud gaming service that Microsoft's made. Because they have the client base. They can offer it as a Netflix Plus or type of service.
I will split. I agree with your premise. I will split with you when you say that they're going to compete with Xbox Game Pass or Sony's
thing. They could.
I
said that they're probably one of the only ones that could, because they have the subscriber base. They can offer it as just a little perk upgrade and roll it out with their additional service. And all you have to do is have a hardware compatible device that's able to connect a controller to it.
Do you remember back in it wasn't that long ago, but 2011, 2012, 2013, maybe even into 2014, there was this big push on the companion apps. Like the Xbox had their companion app.
Oh, yeah,
Sony had their companion app.
Even my keyboard has a companion app. Your mouse has a companion app.
There was a big push back it may have even been later, it may have been around 2015, for this second screen experience where you would be playing a game on your Xbox One or your PlayStation 4, and then have your phone doing the voice chat or handling tech, the messaging, and it was called the Xbox Companion app. I have a suspicion. I don't think Netflix will be able to go into full on video game streaming because their base of hardware is so broad. I mean, they're on smart.
That's
TVs
the thing, is they'd have to make it.
Yeah, but what I think they could do very well is that watch along kind of pick your point and click adventure games that are very popular on PC, as were the graphic novels that are very popular on Steam. Doing things like that with your phone as the input device is probably, if I had to guess, would be more of the direction that Netflix is heading. Because Netflix is available on literally everything from your
and do they
microwave
even need it to connect to the device? It could be a Wi-Fi enabled controller that connects directly to Netflix for all that matters. They don't even need it to really connect to the device itself.
I guess that's true, and then you'd be talking about serious latency and things like that. But I envision them using, because they're already doing it. They're going to be releasing a Stranger Things kind of 8-bit side-scrolling kind of game. Actually, I believe that I think that might already be out. I have no idea. I have a suspicion that's more of what Netflix is probably going to do with their popular, because they have a huge catalog of exclusive content that they produce in-house. I mean, Netflix Studios is one of the largest content producers in the world right now. Squid Game, Stranger Things, those are just the two of the most popular ones right now. There's 1,000 other ones. I have a suspicion that's probably what they're going to do more of than a traditional gaming service, because I don't think they can compete. And I'm not. Netflix is already very expensive. I believe the cheapest subscription to Netflix right now is already $11, which in comparison to Game Pass, which is $15 a month, I think, or maybe $9 a month, depending on the package that you have. If for them to add another gaming thing, they're going to tack another $15. Serious. So we're talking about competition to Xbox or Sony. You'd be talking about another $15+ on your bill. I'm not sure Netflix can compete, and I'm not sure they should. I mean, they've got the tech, they've got the user base, but why reinvent the wheel? I don't think there's any question about it that Microsoft is going to be king in this service, and because of the power that Microsoft has in the gaming world, Netflix does not. They have no ties to gaming at all. I mean, none. They've got nothing there. So they would have to essentially build something from the ground up to make a full-fledged game streaming service. And I'm not sure that that's what the market's looking for. I think what would be cool, because again, Netflix's big thing is when you're watching something on Netflix, most of the time, you can't watch it anywhere else. That's the big thing with Netflix. With their exclusive shows, with their timed exclusive content, you either watch it on Netflix. If it's a Netflix show, that's the only place you watch it. If it's a TV series, an older TV show, obviously you can go out and buy the DVD set or buy it on Amazon. But there's not really any competition there. Obviously, there are other streaming services, but they all have different categories and content that they provide. And I'm not sure that Netflix can compete or would even want to compete with Sony and or Microsoft in that regard. So I assume they'll stay in their own lane. They could try. I think it will be an abysmal failure, but they'll do something. Maybe this companion app on the phone.
They said they want to be the best in mobile gaming or whatever, online gaming or however they were. I have to look at what they want to be the best in category. I'm trying to remember what that category is, but it's not mobile. But they're putting out mobile games. I don't know why they keep on kind of pushing that they're going to be an online streaming gaming service where most of these are happening on their mobile phone and it's a part of their Netflix subscription. It's included.
And we didn't even talk about GeForce Now, which is essentially what Netflix would be able to do, which is full streaming of mobile device of games to your device. So there's already 3 services. There's more than 3, but there's 3 main services that already do this. And I honestly, they released a couple of these games last year. I have never heard anything about them. I haven't heard anybody that's played them. I haven't seen anybody that I haven't, nothing like that at all.
Well, and I think they're going to have to come up with things. I mean, we keep hearing about metaverse, and I think a lot of what's going to hold people in the supposed metaverse are games and things. Because what's going to keep people playing on this online virtual world? You have to have something for them to go there and do. And I just think that they're still trying to figure out all these things that want to be part of this supposed metaverse that we keep hearing about. Are trying to figure out. One thing, Facebook, they put out a thing saying that could involve tracking your eyes and more. So as far as advertising in the metaverse, they want to track your eyes to see where you look, see what you're looking at. It's just one more way they can get more data on you. And I think that's a lot of what this metaverse is how can we get people to commit even more of their daily life to us, where Facebook has lost a ton of followers or subscribers. They've tanked, their stock has tanked in the past as well, in the past couple weeks. I don't know if you saw that. But they're doing very poorly And it's like I think they're looking for that next thing. Well, how can we bring people in, because the old methods aren't working? The younger generation doesn't seem to care about Facebook as much. They're using other things. I think that if they can get people to come in this supposed metaverse, and all these places are trying for it, Facebook's trying for it, and Epic, they just filed for a trademark for Epic's Games Megaverse. So I'm assuming that's going to be their metaverse, whatever they end up making. But I mean, they have the platform to do it. They've created a system that can do some pretty cool things in real time in a pretty big environment. However they try to do it. But it's also partnered with Spire Animation Studios to build these metaverse experiences. I still don't know exactly what a metaverse is going to be.
No,
other than like the old, like when I first got on the internet, the chat rooms, to me, that was the metaverse. That thing was so foreign to me, going online and going to a chat room and all these people from wherever.
Talking to old men proposing to be.
Well, yeah, at the time boys. I didn't realize that. I was young when the internet first started being seen. But what's it going to be? I still don't think, just like people didn't know what the internet was going to be really back when I started using it early and before that. I don't think anyone knows what this metaverse is going to be, because how are they going to profit off it? That's what they're trying to figure out. How do we profit off of this?
Advertising.
And I just don't see a clean way other than what MMOs are. I mean, make an MMO world that you can play and kind of just be in it somehow. They already exist.
Yeah. Saul Greatman says metaverse, one-stop shopping for data mining and selling your anonymized data. Yeah, I mean that is the the reason services are free is so that they can sell your data to advertisers. I mean that is that, and that is precisely what I see the metaverse becoming. Well, Brian,
if they can get you to take pictures and stuff of your environment and try to bring things into it, dude, they get more data. That's all. Oh,
absolutely, yeah, they love that. We have talked very little about survival games over the past couple of weeks, and so let's just talk about a survival game quickly. This story's a couple of weeks old, but I think it's interesting to get into. Krafton, who is the maker and the publisher of PUBG, filed a lawsuit a few weeks ago. It is suing the developer of 2 mobile games that it accuses of copying PUBG Battlegrounds. The 2 games are known as Free Fire and Free Fire Max, and they are both mobile shooters. Now, I'm going to show you 2 pictures first, and then I'll get more into it. Here is Free Fire, which looks exactly like PUBG, from the mini-map to the HUD, a full-on ripoff of PUBG. And here's Free Fire Max, which looks a little bit different, but for all intents and purposes is exactly that. The most interesting thing about this story is not the fact that they're just suing these 2 developers. Brian, they're also suing Apple and Google for putting those games on their platforms. And they're even accusing Google in their lawsuit of hosting YouTube videos with gameplay of the 2 games in question, as well as numerous posts containing full-length Chinese film that is nothing more than a blatant infringement of a live-action dramatization of Battlegrounds. So they said, according to Krafton, they said Free Fire and Free Fire Max extensively copies numerous aspects of Battlegrounds, both individually and in combination, including Battlegrounds' copywritten unique game opening airdrop feature, the game's structure and play, the combinations and selections of weapons, armors, unique objects, locations, and overall choice of color scheme and material. And there are a couple of images here showing the difference. Here is on the left side of your screen for the video listeners. This is the Battlegrounds on mobile, how it looks on the left. And on the right is Free Fire and what that looks like. It is literally identical. I mean, the color shading is a little bit different, but it is a blatant.
It's not quite as well made.
No, it's not quite as well made, but it is in the exact same style of PUBG. So they are not only suing the developers, but they are suing Google and Apple for this. And to say that these are nothing to worry about, Free Fire earned $1.1 billion in player spending in the year 2021. So these are not, this is not just a guy in his basement making a game that's just screwing around. I mean, this is a very lucrative business for somebody that literally made $1 billion off of the game. PUBG Mobile.
And one thing, Crafton said that on December 21st, they asked them to immediately stop, the immediate exploitation of Free Fire and Free Fire Max. And that was to Garena, that publisher, and then that was refused. They refused that, and then they went to Apple and Google, and they asked them to stop distributing the games, but they're still both available on the store. It asked YouTube to remove those videos featuring the gameplay, and that video that that was pretty much a copy of the old ones that they used to make, and YouTube still hasn't removed that either. So, one thing, they're picking their sides. Honestly, this right here, China's been very bad about copyright infringement, patent infringement, whatever kind of infringement. They don't respect our laws here. Then they don't respect a lot of international laws. And this is it playing out. This is playing out in the video game industry. It happens in patents all the time, and technology of them going and copying various schematics and things like that and making it there without the research costs. This is now in gaming. It's going to happen when there's not laws that are enforced.
There's a great example here from North Carolina. It's not relevant to video games at all, but there's a company in North Carolina called Charlotte Pipe. If you have PVC piping in your house, you probably have a piece of Charlotte Pipe. Back in probably 2014 or 2015, right when I was looking to move down here, Brian, a Chinese company was not only making the exact same pipe that Charlotte Pipe was making, they were branding it Charlotte Pipe and importing it into the United States with the same name.
And there's no one there to stop them.
There's nothing that can be done except for banning the imports of a product from China, which we know is not ever done.
It's not going to happen right now.
So not only are
it's practically banned right now, they're sitting at a port. But hey,
that's true. But we talk about manufacturing a physical product, right, which requires you to tool a product, do extensive research to develop the product. Well, in terms of a video game,
take years of development and research.
Yeah, on a video game, it's you throw a bunch of guys in a Chinese coding sweatshop and say, "Hey, copy this gameplay style," and you can probably have a game banged out in a fully playable operational game in just a couple of weeks. So it's in comparison, it's a very easy thing for a company or for a developer to do. So they are going after both of these games and also going after Apple and Google. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. We'll follow that here.
All right. Do you have a preference where we go from here? I know there's some things you wanted to cover. We got Microsoft Steam Deck news. We've got a couple of things we could cover.
Yeah, let's do the Steam Deck just because it's so timely. I believe the launch embargoes and everything were released yesterday. So you've probably started to see YouTube videos making their way up there. Linus Tech Tips did a good video. Gamers Nexus did a good video about some of the hardware on it. The device is still not fully embargoed, so they can't show the software, but they did show gameplay. And I'll save it till everybody gets their hands on these things. But Brian, this looks like a pretty damn impressive device, unless they can't figure out software, because the hardware seems fine. Unless there are major software issues on launch, and even if there are on launch, if there's software issues that they can rectify, I think Valve has got an absolute grand slam on their plate here. Courtesy of Denny's, they can. This is I mentioned this in the pre-show. In the Linus Tech Tips video, Linus mentioned that this is likely one of the largest jumps in PC gaming in over 2 decades with this device at $399 with what it's capable of doing and playing. This thing looks absolutely
and there's some
phenomenal.
Size comparisons too. One thing they're looking at, the size comparison between the Switch and the Steam Deck is just, the Switch looks so small. And I think we're getting kind of a weird change in gaming, where before everybody went from computers and big things down to mobile games. And I think people are kind of missing the ability to do some things that they lose by making the screen super small and making the controls super small. This is, I think, a nice compromise. It's big enough to where you can carry it around and get a decent screen size, probably has a decent battery life, but it's not something that's so small that you can barely use it. Especially running these games that aren't necessarily made for this.
Isn't this exactly what we saw with the cell phone market? I mean, cell phones were huge in the 80s and 90s. Then in the late 90s, early 2000s, you had cell phones that were the size of credit cards. And then now you've got iPhone 13 Pro Maxes and Samsung.
And now the screens are getting bigger again.
Yeah, I mean, it's this bell curve of back and forth. We want power, and then we want size, and then we want usability. So
I think part of it is probably the economy too. I think that with economy, sometimes just like cars, I think sometimes, and we're here with the weird shortages on electronics and whatever else that we have now. I think we're in a weird time where I don't know where these are going to go. As long as they can get parts for them and keep pushing these things out, they'll sell. Well, consoles, obviously that didn't work, but if they can get it to work in this and get them into people's hands, I think people will choose this, especially if they can put the Game Pass and come up with other ways to get games outside of consoles.
Well, and you already talk about a user base. The people that are going to be buying this likely have already gamed on Steam. So you're talking about day one you purchase this device, Brian, and outside of the $399 or $499 price tag, there might not be any additional costs for you. If you've already got hundreds of games in your Steam library, there's no cost at all for you to play anything that you want on here, which is not something that Nintendo could say with the Switch. If you go and buy a Switch, you don't have, and if it's your first Switch, you don't have games day one. You've got to go out and buy $49 to $59.99 games, and you can download stuff on the store.
Which they totally control that market, and they don't
they do.
let that fluctuate very much.
They don't. So
I think people are going to want this to be more open, and I think this is an opportunity to have a little bit more open gaming, where with consoles you couldn't even ask for it because it was such a lockdown system.
Yeah, and the same thing. You buy a new Xbox or a new PlayStation, and unless you're playing all your games on Game Pass, which if you're playing them all on Game Pass, I don't know why you'd buy a new console anyway. You've got to buy all of the titles. With this, you literally don't have to spend a penny outside of the hardware if you've already got a Steam library, which between free games that Steam constantly gives away and between the numerous sales that they run every year, anybody that's even the most modest of PC gamers, Brian, probably has 50 plus games in their library. And day one, you power this thing up, log into your Steam account, and boom, you're done. You've got everything at your fingertips. This looks to be a very impressive device. From what I've seen, there were a couple more videos that came out today. Haven't had a chance to watch any of them yet. I found this other side-by-side comparison pretty funny. The Sega's attempt at this back in the I think this was the 90s, right? The mid 90s. The Sega
it was about
Game
the
Gear.
mid-late 90s.
Yeah, and you can see the size, and really the big thing is the screen comparison. But when you look at the size difference between the Switch and the Steam Deck, you look at the different control interfaces. Not only does it have analog sticks, it's got a full D-pad, which is the Switch has their kind of faux D-pad, and then it's got the touch devices like the Sony PlayStation controller has that have haptic feedback. They can be used in mouse mode so that you can play games like Civ and other sorts of top-down games, StarCraft and things like that require more precise mouse movement, and then plus an A, B, X, Y buttons on the top. It's just all in all a pretty impressive device. I had my doubts. I think many people did, but from everything, I can't believe they're actually releasing this device with the chip shortage. I know they did their slight delay, but the devices are shipping out now. People already have their hands on them.
Somehow they got them
now. So this is very, very cool.
One thing I did see is Tim Sweeney did say that they're not going to be putting Fortnite's not going to be running on it. And I think it's more of a choice because, they run easy anti-cheat. It's not about that. But they're not wanting to open up Fortnite to all the possible kernels and variations of hardware that you can allow with these devices because they're not locked to this particular piece of hardware. He was just saying that it just would open up a lot of things that they would, to maximize the compatibility. They're working on that now. But at this time, no Fortnite, so we will see. I'm sure that there will be ways to play Fortnite on it that people will come up with.
Yeah, you can install Windows.
Through any of no official methods at this moment.
Yeah, and he says in a tweet, he said, because Tim Sweeney literally responded to some guy who's got the Linux Penguin as his profile picture. And, of course, 3 vaccine shot emojis. we don't have confidence that we'll be able to combat cheating at the scale under a wide array of kernel configurations, including custom ones. So that's their concern. Is now I would make that argument, Brian, but that's kind of bullshit, because you can essentially do that with Windows. And I know it's not kernels with Windows, but you have as many of those different environments on Windows that you do presumably on this. So maybe
I think they're more concerned about opening it up on Linux and letting people have better access to their. No, I don't think so. I don't think they have a way to play it on Linux. They don't have a client for it. They have a mobile, like an Android one, but that's only for specific versions of Android. It's pretty limited.
Yeah, so it is. Okay, so that makes sense. So it is not currently playable on Linux. I guess the only people are playing it on Linux through.
And if they did, they would be opening themselves up, and they just don't want to open up more paths to manipulate and try to cheat in Fortnite, which I can understand. You know, they're sure they'd love to put it on there, but you know what? They'd be probably making a big mess that they would regret later if they did.
Well, and let's be honest, they've got a competing store, and who knows what the future of Epic is with their game store. They're not going to put Fortnite on Steam, so they're probably just going to go ahead and wait it out and maybe see what read the tea leaves on it once the device is out, and then maybe decide, hey, there's a lot of users on here, maybe we should add it. But again, Fortnite is already available on mobile devices and things like that. So if you really are hell-bent, it's available on the Switch. So, I mean, if you're hell-bent on playing Fortnite, play it on your Switch or play it on your phone.
Yep. Hey, do you want to end up with some Microsoft news, more Epic news? What are you in the mood for?
You pick. Dealer's choice.
Well, let's throw out some quick little things on Epic. One thing, there is a report we have in the show notes if you want to check it out, where Epic Game Stores reports continued growth. They gave away 765 million free games in 2021.
Wow.
And they're happy with that. So I know a lot of people are giving them flack, but they're doing what they're doing. We'll have some information on that. They've also are opening up a new Polish studio. So if you're looking to get employed by Epic in Poland, there is a new Polish studio that they're also opening up. And then there's some stuff about the new Silent Hill 5. They did a remake in Unreal Engine 5, but we can show that later. Let's talk about Microsoft really quick.
Sure.
For people that maybe they have a Game Pass subscription that they haven't been using, they're just not logging in, not taking advantage of it. They're going to be putting in some changes for the UK regulators, because there's been a lot of legal things for Google, Microsoft, and Facebook for privacy and everything else, and having dormant account and holding on to dormant information. So what they're going to be doing is, if you have a dormant account, they will automatically cancel those accounts if you're not using them. So that, which I think is, a very nice thing, because I've had accounts that sit out there for a year, they've ran and I'm not really done it. But it'll be these inactive memberships, people that have like 12 months recurring contracts, give them the opportunity to cancel that and get a refund for maybe, unused. So I think a lot of this is coming down to the regulations, though. A lot of these UK regulations that are changing and putting a lot of these restrictions, and hopefully we'll see some of these things in the United States, because they're making a lot of changes for consumer privacy and protections. This will hopefully bleed over. I don't know why they wouldn't make this available and do the kind of similar thing in the United States. I haven't seen that 100% confirmed in here, but I think that would be a good feature.
Yeah, and they say that the changes that they are committed to making, definitely because they're committed and it's not government regulation, is better upfront information. Yeah, exactly. Better upfront information, refunds, inactive memberships, and better information about price increases. They say gamers need to be given clear and timely information to make informed choices when signing up for auto-renewing memberships and subscriptions. That's according to the CMA executive director, and he said, "We are therefore pleased that Microsoft has given the CMA these formal undertakings to improve the fairness of their practices and protect consumers, and will be offering refunds to certain customers." See, I'm a little torn on this. I think we've all kind of maybe fallen into the trap once or twice of signing up for a service and not reading it's not even the fine print, but just not reading the details on it. Is this really a place for the government to be involved? I don't think so. I mean, if you, the consumer, are going to put your credit card with a company like Microsoft and not read what you're signing up for, Brian, that's on you. I mean, now if they hide the information, all right, maybe we can have a conversation, but companies like Microsoft are not burying the terms of membership in a 600-page TOS. They are, now they might be in small text, they might be at the bottom of the screen, but they are clear for what you're paying for. They're very clear with what you're paying for. So this to me just seems like,
I don't think I think this is a nice feature, but the government shouldn't be the one that makes them do it. And it doesn't really make sense to do it. If people want to cancel, just make it easy to cancel. This is a nice thing, but it's not very business-like. It's kind of odd. They're making them do something that's not very business-like to do. Hey, we're going to cancel your service if you don't end up using it. Oh, that's nice. Why is the government telling you to do that? I mean, it shouldn't be a forced thing to do. There's no way they should be saying you have to cancel people's memberships if they're not using with them a reasonable amount of time. I think they're still trying to figure out, because they're worrying about billion-dollar fines and everything. Google's had billion-dollar fines in the UK. I think all these people are trying to figure out what they can do, and they're willing to do things farther than what they have, because I think they've seen what is happening to other places that aren't conforming. They just huge fines, shut them down. There's very little flex that they're letting people have on this.
Yeah, between GDPR and this and everything else that's going on over there in the UK and the
EU. They've been locking down over years in the EU, so this is just another symptom of it. And then another thing, Blizzard is working on a Warcraft mobile game. You remember the 2018 mobile game they announced, and they said, don't you have games or phones? Because people were booing.
Yeah, BlizzCon, right?
Back in the day. Yeah, at BlizzCon. Well, they are doing another. I don't think this is anything to do with that. Was Diablo Immortal, I think. But now this is going to be another one. So we'll see with the acquisition and if that's going to change anything. Are they going to delay this? They are announcing, it was in the quarterly financial report, but that doesn't mean they intended to announce it. This could have been one of the kind of finished games that here's another thing that is an incentive for you to purchase this company. Is we have a game that's mobile, it's almost done, here you go, this will be instant money coming into your pockets. So they haven't talked very heavily about it, but it is Warcraft related, so they haven't given up on that whole franchise yet.
Interesting. Now, I assume that this was already in play prior to the Microsoft act. I don't think anything that we'll see.
That's why I don't think they intended to announce it. It's just it came out in the quarterlies because they had to report on where their money was.
Gotcha.
This could be something that they were now, because of the sale and everything, they may be delaying. I'm sure that there'll be more news than this, because this was definitely not the way they intended it for it to be released, which means that it makes me think that they held on to it for a little while longer than they intended.
In the financial report, Activision Blizzard said its mobile net bookings grew 18% year over year and represented 33% of its total net bookings in the quarter. So obviously there is a market there that they're continuing to grow. Yep. Call of Duty Mobile, they're claiming that the Call of Duty Mobile growth in China is one of the big reasons as well, especially for China and different parts of the world where mobile gaming tends to be more lucrative than in the U.S. This could be interesting.
Yes, and then some of the Windows 11 things that are coming out is still under Microsoft.
Are you running Windows 11?
No.
Okay.
No, I haven't. I just use this for work and various other things. I just haven't tried it yet. I probably do it on maybe a laptop or something first. But I know you're running it. Haven't had minimal issues because I don't hear you complaining about it too much.
No.
But they are going to be.
If there were, believe me,
out.
No.
They're starting to put out updates kind of aimed at gamers, because I think there's, when they have performance issues on a new operating system, it really will make people not want to move to it. And so they're going to be putting in some updates. First, there's some SSD hard drive bug fixes that they're dealing with in Windows 11. And then also that before, initially, I think didn't tank gaming performance that first week or two. There was some fix that they
AMD
put out.
Chips. It was in a specific.
With AMD chips, they just had horrible issues with the performance. So now with these recent updates, and it is an optional download, so you may want to go and check it out on yours. Make sure you're getting that, because that does fix a lot of those SSD and the hard disk drive related issues that they've been having with Windows 11. That was a lot of those performance issues. And so go grab that. They've also, as far as antivirus, all these things I think are going to come into play, trying to get an operating system that isn't fighting itself, because the antivirus and all these things that we've had in the past have caused a lot of issues. And Microsoft doesn't want to open up the operating system anymore. They want to tie it down even tighter, and lock it down to where these things aren't happening. And I think that Windows 11 is going to kind of be their opportunity. I think that's why they're pushing so hard for drive encryption and having all these features to where they can lock down that operating system and not worry about people changing files and hacking it in it so much, because that works better for business and it works for gamers, because you can do malicious things if you can get into a process in business as well, right? You can pull data that you don't intend to get. So I think for them, there's a lot of incentive to fix it for both places, because they can't push this out for business if it's going to have a lot of these issues too.
It's a lot more damning when you've got a problem with your business versus some Chinese hacker killing you in a video game. Yeah. I'd make the argument it's a far bigger issue for the business sector that is using Windows for sure.
Yeah, and I think if they can get the operating system locked down, it can get people locked into stores, kind of like they have mobile. Mobile, they can, because they lock down the operating system so heavily. Then they turn around and say, okay, you can't use any other stores. You have to use this, or they start putting these limitations. I really think that was kind of Microsoft's original goal. I don't know. There's been kind of a change in how the government feels about that, how people feel about a lot of these things. I think they're kind of doing a reverse, but we'll see how heavily Microsoft goes, in this operating system.
And in other Microsoft news, we're talking about Bethesda. Phil Spencer was quoted this past week saying that they want to make Starfield the most played Bethesda game ever, which is a pretty,
after Skyrim, that's a pretty big,
well, not even after just Skyrim, but after Skyrim, after the successes with the Fallout series, Doom. I mean, you're talking about very, very popular. Wasn't Duke Nukem id Software? Maybe Duke Nukem was
was that Capcom? I'd have to.
Nevertheless, you're talking about, Doom was one of the premier PC games in the 90s. I mean, it was the game. Fallout 3, Fallout New Vegas games, Skyrim. You can play it on your fridge with all of the different variations and how many different consoles that game has been released on, and it's been out now for.
That was Apogee
2010.
Apogee and Gearbox.
Apogee, okay. So and then Skyrim, which has been out since 2010, I guess. So you're talking about over a decade at this point. But that's going to be a hard nut to crack here, Brian, because this Bethesda game is not going to be on PlayStation. So you want to make the most played Bethesda game ever, but you are essentially chopping off one of the arms of the, say what you want about Sony versus Microsoft. Sony still has a huge, huge, huge footprint in the gaming sphere. And I don't see how you can make this claim that you want it to be the most played game ever, but then also not allow it on PlayStation. Now, I understand that, but Sony or Microsoft is not going to put these games on Sony, and that's fine. But you've dramatically cut down your player base. So you have to decide, what would you rather have? The exclusive with less players, or the non-exclusive with a larger player pool? And for a multiplayer game, this and having a larger player pool and cross-platform is a really, really big thing. So I'm wondering how, here's the thing. They're not going to develop the game for PlayStation. So it's not going to come out. It's not like one of those things where it's going to release on Xbox and they're going to go, shit, we need to make it for Sony if we need to make it for the PlayStation. Now, I don't think that's going to happen. But I don't see how you can do both of those things at the same time.
But in this, I would suspect that they're going to come out with them as many ways to really play this. And I think that maybe mobile integration and bringing other ways to play this, as far as mobile, these type of games have a hard time holding on to a player past the first hour, especially flying games. I'm really interested to see how they get people to get in a ship and fly and really stay stuck to this, like games like Skyrim have been able to do. The mechanics are going to be way different. I think they're going to have an uphill battle, and I am interested to see, are they going to make it to where it's not all just flying around, but then also you have a mobile game, which helps get you resources, and they really bring other things to make it to where this is a very, very highly played game through many different avenues, just not PlayStation. That's kind of my guess, because there's a lot. If they want everybody doing this, they got to make it a huge, huge universe.
When it launches, which it is going to launch this year, one of the most anticipated games of 2022. It's scheduled to be out as of right now. We'll cross our fingers, November the 11th. It will be on the Xbox Series X and S consoles, and it will also be available on PC via Xbox Game Pass on day one. So it'll be on all of the Xboxes and on Game Pass for the PC players on day one. But even with that, and obviously this is not going to be a mobile game, missing out on a huge, huge portion of that marketplace with it not being on PlayStation. But on the flip side,
I'm hoping it's huge. I'm hoping it's amazing. It'd be nice to have a game like this where it just showcases technology really well. It's like Skyrim has a huge world, creates its own lore. Let's see something new, because it's been a little while since we've had kind of those big, huge lore creators of a game, like Skyrim and
Fallout 76.
Go look at just all the books and the new Fallout didn't accomplish it. I'm hoping that they can actually kind of bring that back with this and put out a game that's just fun to sit and run around, fly around, do whatever, play. Yeah, it's been a while since I've had one of those.
Agreed. So that'll be out a little bit later on this year. I'm sure we'll have more details released in the next couple of months on that. Brian, before we get out of here, I just do want to cover this interesting headline from Nintendo. We talked a little bit about Nintendo today in reference to the Steam Deck. Nintendo says that they have no plans to purchase any major gaming companies. So it looks like the battle, shocker and surprise, looks like they will continue to go down their track of
sell other people's games.
Well, it's not even selling other people's games.
And games here and there.
Well, they've got their Zelda, their Mario, their Animal Crossing. They've got Splatoon. They've got their games. They don't need to purchase another. They don't need to purchase another studio.
And they have some pretty big hits. Zelda's was a huge hit. Animal Crossing was a huge hit. There's the ones that they have put out, they've done very well on, and then also they're making all of this money from selling other people's games on the Switch. Without really making a real console. I think they've done a brilliant move. It saved the company, because they didn't have to put out a Wii U 3 or any of those things.
I wonder how long until we look at a Switch 2, because the hardware on even with the Switch OLED, the hardware is still the same aging hardware from 2015, 2016. It is an older piece of hardware at this point. With the Steam Deck coming into the market,
this will be their test. Really, because Nintendo they hate putting out new updated hardware.
Every other console is a disaster.
I think here this is a big risk for them, and they're just going to have to bite the bullet and start actually putting out regular versions of the Switch, or else people are going to move on to something else has the ability to run everything.
Yeah, and again, they do have kind of they've got kind of our balls in a vice grip with with Zelda and Mario and things like that. But it'll get to a point where the hardware is just, while the Zelda game is great, you can tell it is an older piece of hardware that it is playing on. It does not look amazing on it. Now, to be fair, you're going to play a game like Doom Eternal on the Steam Deck at $399. You are not going to be playing it on ultra or even high settings. You're probably going to be playing on medium or low with an FPS cap to save your battery life. You got to manage your expectations with it. But a rapidly aging hardware in an industry in which Nintendo was completely by themselves. Now, AO Neo and some of these other companies made these Windows devices that looked like Switches that would play games. They were way too expensive. We're talking about $800-900 plus. Very, very small user share with that, because who the hell is going to spend $900 on a Nintendo Switch device that poorly plays PC games? But with a competitor at $399 in that marketplace, this is going to be the first competitor that Nintendo's had since they've released the Switch. Similar to what the PSP did with the Nintendo DS. And obviously we saw how Sony failed that miserably with the Vita, and how Nintendo just continued trucking along with the DS, then the DS XL, then the 3DS, then the 3DS XL, and the 2DS. So it will be interesting to see what Nintendo.
They've got to get people locked into some sort of a subscription, something where they have, okay, this game works on these past revisions of hardware. They're kind of putting themselves in a tough spot with this closed marketplace they're creating, because they have to continue it. But how are they going to continue if they don't keep putting out hardware? They can't keep putting out new games unless they put out new hardware. And I know they're just not doing it. They got to do it.
Yeah. Very interesting.
And them putting out a slight screen difference for clarity is not a hardware upgrade.
No, it's not. It's the exact same hardware.
Run any better. Yeah. So that's too bad. We'll see. This will be the make or break for them. There's going to be a lot of competition, I think, coming up in the next coming years, especially if we get to a point where the hardware and all the shortages and everything kind of go away. Once those start to fade, whoever's ready with some really cool stuff to sell people will be ready to buy it. I mean, people still are buying Switch or the consoles like crazy off the shelves.
Yeah.
You're not seeing them everywhere in the store yet. Still, years later. So I just think it's still got a ways to go. But
yes, sir.
We'll see if they're there in the end.
All right. Anything else that we need to cover before we get out of here?
Nope, we can cover some of these. We got some NFT, a lot of NFT news going back and forth. We can talk about next week and some NVIDIA stuff. So if you want to find me, get me at Brian Aldrich on Gab, Parler, and Getter. And of course, if you want to go to my blog, biteoftech.com, and go to our website, you go to infectionpodcast.com, look on the right-hand side where it says join our server on Discord. If you do that, you can spit news topics. You can come and play some ARC with a bunch of our listeners. A lot of stuff going on in there, and a lot of places if you want to help encouraging working out, a lot of different things in there. That link is on mobile app, web-based app, desktop app, lots of ways to connect. If you want to watch the show, you can do that through Twitch, YouTube, BitChute, and DLive. We have live and after the fact recordings on a lot of those services. If you want to listen to it, you'll have to do that after the fact when we upload the episode. So if you go to the lower right-hand side, whatever platform device you're wanting to listen to us on, we have a link for each of those. And then go to the particular episode that you're going to be listening to and follow along, because we have links to the articles, documents, anything, videos that we're referring to throughout the show. We have a link to that inside of the show notes, and a video and audio player for you to follow along in. If you want to support us, you can do that through the support tab up top or infectionpodcast.com/support. And we thank you for everybody who has supported us these past couple of years, especially with COVID and everything else going on. And the Prime Gaming subs, we really appreciate it. And hopefully we'll see you again here soon. Hopefully maybe warmer weather is coming. It seems like it's getting a little warmer here and there. You don't have to wear a coat all the time.
60-something here tomorrow, which is
60-something. Wow, that's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
here it was 20-something this morning when I drove the kids to school.
Well, it's 40 outside right now, so there's really no complaints here. It's a little chill. I got to run quickly down to the mailbox to grab my mail and come back. Brian, ditto all your statements about the support. Appreciate it from everybody as always. Appreciate you on all of the show prep, and we will see you next Tuesday.
Sounds good. See you then.
Alrighty, folks. Well, my name is Nick Craig. I host a daily news talk program, dark and early, from 6 to 9 a.m. Eastern. You could find the podcast of that. It's called Wilmington's Morning News. Search for it in your favorite podcast app, or head on over to my website, nickcraig.com. That's going to do it for another edition of Infection. If you missed any portion of the show, maybe you want to check out that LostArk trailer. You can head on over to our website, infectionpodcast.com, where you'll find show notes, images, links, and all of the things that we talked about on this week's episode. That's going to do it. Have a great week, everybody. We'll see you next time.